Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. As today's video title suggests, we're going to be talking about fashion months and whether they're obsolete, basically. It sounds a little harsh, but I was actually just in Copenhagen last week. If you're a follower on here, you'll have seen my vlog about it. And whilst I had a really amazing time, it got me thinking about whether fashion months and fashion weeks are actually worth it, or whether they're part of the outdated system of fashion that seems to be more wasteful than ever in our current economy, I guess, and in our current understanding of sustainability. So yeah, I wanted to talk about this and bring you along for the ride. So let's go. So in my inbox this morning was a newsletter from Vogue with the title, "Where was pre-fall this year?" Pre-fall is one of the unofficial sort of smaller seasons of fashion month scheduling. It goes autumn winter in January to February, and then it goes on to pre-fall in June to August. Then we have spring summer in September, early October time, and then it goes on to cruise resort in November to early Jan. This is the way it's been for a while. It's based on old systems of production models, because obviously production models used to be a lot longer. It's also based on editorial campaigns for magazines, because they need a lot of lead time before they shoot something to when it appears on the racks of magazine stalls. But for each of these four sort of micro seasons or 4 seasons, you get hundreds and hundreds of shows. You also get a lot of different fashion weeks that are showing these collections. So for example, everyone knows about the big 4. You've got London, Paris, Milan and New York. You have smaller fashion weeks like Australia, Seoul, Copenhagen, obviously, Tokyo. You have Indian Fashion Week, and each of these fashion weeks are showing upwards to 100, 200 designers each time. So it's a lot of impact each time the fashion industry gets together for one of these collections. One thing I did notice, one thing I've been noticing since I got back from Copenhagen, is the fact that the media wasn't very positive in their coverage of it, I guess. A lot of people said it was like really subdued and quiet. Other people said it wasn't innovative enough, that sustainability wasn't really at the forefront. This is surprising, because until now, Copenhagen has really been held up as a shining example of how good fashion weeks can be, how sustainable they can be. They have a whole list of requirements they have to hit, both during fashion week and also as part of their wider strategy, which I do fully support, and which is why I was so excited to go to Copenhagen Fashion Week in the first place. If even Copenhagen is not faring well in, the media's eyes, then I don't see how the others are going to be able to survive as well. I guess not survive, but how they can make a case for themselves that they're still relevant. Do you know what I mean? Copenhagen being at, the forefront right now of Sustainable Fashion Week, that's so important. And the others just aren't hitting the same mark. I think if even Copenhagen is struggling, then there's no hope for the other 4 right now. Fashion weeks in general have just been reduced down to viral moments on the catwalk, or like what celebrities attending. And I spoke a little bit about this in my Balenciaga video. And as someone pointed out, that's obviously good for the brand, and part of what the fashion show is for the brand. So, viral moments on social media, whatever. But it just feels really gimmicky now to me. I'm not sure I actually ever look forward to seeing much out of fashion weeks. The only thing I really look forward to is the street style. The catwalks have just become really monotonous and overwhelming. Like, there's hundreds of designers for each one. It's insane. So going back to what Vogue's newsletter said, they asked where pre-fall was this year. And this is because they reviewed 39 less pre-fall collections from designers this year compared to 2023. And this is one of the issues of the industry we need to talk about. Designers themselves are calling for a change in the schedule that we've traditionally seen from fashion months and fashion weeks. So during the pandemic, there was an open letter signed by a lot of different brands that called for a complete change in how fashion months were scheduled and what was required from them. Brands were asking for a shift to less fashion weeks, but also a time frame shift that would allow them to adopt more of a see now, buy now model. So when they're releasing their collections of autumn winter, they will be doing that in September, October, when it actually is autumn winter for a lot of the global hemisphere, and doing their spring summer shows in January, February. Why were they asking for this? There's a couple of reasons. A lot of brands are struggling from creative fatigue. For instance, they are expected to keep churning out new ideas, new models, new innovations at an alarming rate, and they can't keep up with it. There's also obviously budget restrictions if you have to keep producing collections constantly year round. One sort of report I looked at suggested that there are actually 52 micro seasons a year because brands are now expected to put out something new every week. And that kind of constant overproduction, constant thinking of something new, constant cost of doing that is just weighing too heavily on brands, and they're trying to pull back. Before we move on, let's talk about whether it's actually likely to happen that brands get this solution. I don't know. I think it would definitely have to come from the top down. So for example, a lot of smaller brands, independent labels, are trying to, ditch Proofful, for example, which was what Vogue was reporting on. But until a big brand, like I'm talking like LVMH level, does the same thing, then I don't think it will become a widely adopted strategy. Like the narrative won't shift until it's coming from like luxury brands or, like something that's really cult and popular right now. Gucci in 2022 did shift to only 2 seasons a year, which has been working out quite well for them, but it's still not widely adopted enough to have made a difference. So maybe even one popular brand isn't enough. Maybe it needs to be, like I said, a whole kind of collective of brands with enough pulling, like all of LVMH, for example. Then I think people would sit up and take notice. So before I get on to the other part of the video, I wanted to talk about fashion weeks from a sustainability point of view, because obviously I'm going to do that. That's part of what my whole channel is. So literally the biggest impact of fashion weeks is the inherent message of overconsumption. All brands are trying to do in this, time frame where they're showing their collections is get you to buy this, buy that. They're marketing to buyers of companies, they're marketing to consumers, and they're telling them, you need this latest trend. And whilst some brands have managed to steer the conversation a little bit more sustainably, it's still really rampant. Like there's not enough of that happening. But for example, Gucci, which I wouldn't say is necessarily a sustainable brand, but when I was talking about how they reduced down to 2 seasons earlier, one of their other decisions was to show a more seasonless approach to catwalks. And by doing this, they were hoping to encourage a more timeless longevity approach to their designs. And I do definitely agree with this. I'm not saying Gucci is sustainable by any means, but it's definitely a good idea for brands to be doing this. Outside of obviously the overall message of overconsumption, fashion weeks themselves are rampant with pollution. Basically, you have like travel pollution from people flying in. Obviously, I know I'm a bit of a hypocrite here because I flew to Copenhagen, even though it was my first fashion week and most likely my last, barring London, for a long time. I don't know if I'd do it again. But yeah, you have thousands of buyers, influencers, magazine people, just like the fashion crowd flying in. You then have them taking taxis and Ubers and whatever else from the airport to shows. You have the shows themselves, which are based on like set designs of plastic and just probably are going to get thrown away after being used for half an hour or whatever. You have those invitations. The invitations are what annoy me the most, because every so often during fashion week, you'll get a viral moment of like a truly wasteful invitation from a major fashion show that someone's put on social media. I'll try to find an example that's just so unnecessary, but it's like, you know, meant to be another viral marketing moment. There's just so much excess, it feels like, crammed into these weeks. And while Fashion Week itself is not the main problem of fashion, it certainly does not help. It's just like a symbol basically of how wasteful fashion is, in my opinion. Obviously you have notable examples. Copenhagen is trying to be more sustainable. I do think they're doing quite well, based on the current climate and how wasteful the other fashion weeks are. They're really trying to stick their neck out, and I hope that they keep going. But yeah, it's quite disappointing from a sustainability point of view, I guess. Before I move on to solutions, I do just kind of want to put a little caveat saying, like, fashion weeks are fun to me still, even though I maybe don't like the designers and the like excess of catwalk shows. I still do consume like information about them because I find it really interesting. As I said, I love the street style of people getting there. I love to see like the sustainability innovations that are happening there. You often have like new materials debuted, or you have emerging designers that are using the buzz of the fashion weeks to get coverage of their new idea or their upcycle collections or whatever. I really enjoyed Copenhagen Fashion Week, no matter what the rest of the media said about it being a bit dull. I don't know if that was because it was my first fashion week and I had like, you know, rose tinted glasses on or whatever, but I really enjoyed it. I'm planning on going to London, and I do think we are slowly sort of starting to see progress. Not even just in Copenhagen. So for example, Bristol did a sustainable fashion week that got global recognition because of how good it was. And I think stuff like that is really cool and a really good example of where the industry could go. Okay, I wanted to, I guess, offer some solutions. So this is not just a criticism video, it's more of a analytical, what can we do in the fashion industry? What can consumers do? So my first possible solution was basically people not flying to fashion shows. It's a really big solution, I know, but what if we banned people from going to fashion shows in areas that they don't live in? Say, obviously, I live in London. What if I didn't let myself go to Copenhagen and I was only allowed to go to London Fashion Week? What if the people in New York were only allowed to go to New York Fashion Week? Obviously, it would be a big difference, but I think it could be really good. For example, it could be a really good boost to like the local economy. So say like magazines that don't necessarily have people over here but want to still cover it could hire local photographers, hire local reporters and do their coverage for them. Obviously everything is online right now, so you don't really need to be in the room. Our video and like capabilities of streaming a show are insane. You might as well be in the room anyway. Also, I did have the thought that this could be really good for street style. When I was in Copenhagen, I found a lot of like eclectic styles. I was really expecting a lot of Danish inspiration, and it didn't feel like that to me that much. There was definitely some, but a lot of it was like you could see the style anywhere, and I think it's because so many people are flying in. I think if we did bar it to the people that live in that area can go to that fashion week, then you would see a lot more concentrated street style of that culture, and you could get a lot of good inspiration out of it. Obviously, I know social media kind of corrupts that anyway, but I think it would make a bit of a difference. There was also the idea that instead of people not flying to fashion weeks, the brands come to different areas. Let me explain. So brands have flagships in each country. Example, a lot of British fashion brands have their flagships in London. You either have Oxford Street, you have Regent Street, or you have those kind of like Bond Street, really nice areas of London where they have most of their collection showing. They have maybe an office or two there. What if instead of hosting Fashion Week in one area each month or each year, say, brands chose one of their flagships in each country and hosted their collection there? you would be inviting people from the local area to come to this. It would be a big like community thing for brands. Obviously you could still stream it so people would see it, but basically instead of inviting loads of people to come to one area, you would be flying into, like, a couple of people will be flying into an area of loads of people. Does that make sense? The other option is we go completely digital. I mean, AR, VR is becoming so good that you don't really need to be there. Like I said, like, consumers can all just kind of dial in and watch the show as if they're in the front row, which would be a much better experience for consumers anyway. I don't know if you guys saw some of the footage from my vlog, but I was in the back of a room of a warehouse, and whilst that was a really cool view in itself, I think I would have preferred to be in the front row where I could actually see the collections. And then obviously that's so much more accessible for people. Brands would have, you know, more eyeballs on their collections just by the fact that they could actually get there. And it would be a really cool experience, and you know, it could make a rise in VR fashion because people could be choosing what they wear to this virtual event on the runway. I don't know, I think Fashion Week is just obsolete. I feel like there's so many ideas now, so many solutions, and instead of embracing that, they're trying to dig their heels in and stick to tradition, and I feel like that's just the wrong move, but maybe that's me. I'd love to know what you guys think. I'd love to know if you have a possible solution that you think Fashion Month should be trying out, and let me know what you thought of this video. I really enjoyed filming it. I'm obviously very passionate, which is why I'm talking a mile a minute. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Have a lovely week. Bye.